Let's get things started.
All right.
Guys, let's give a very warm welcome to Blau.
And thank you all so much for having me here. I love New York City. I actually originally grew up here, so it's a pleasure to be back.
We're glad to have you. I believe for the format of this, we're going to have about 20 minutes where I'll be asking him questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So if I don't cover anything you're interested in, you can take it from there. So why don't we start off, we've been talking about, dance music, EDM, the term, and both of our kind of distaste for it. And what we kind of, I know that you had just released a video called Dance Isn't Dead. And I'd love to hear you kind of explain the rationale for that and sort of where that comes from and the message you're trying to convey.
Well, that'll be a long conversation, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. Starting with a background story, I got into dance music from a brief trip to Sweden with my best friend Johan. And Johan actually works in New York City. He works here at Morgan Stanley. We were both in finance. And when I went to Sweden, I was just inspired by dance music. I was drawn to it in how it used elements from so many different genres and brought people together in a different kind of way than rock music, than hip hop, than anything else. And so when I returned to the United States after this trip to Sweden, I decided I wanted to be a DJ. And this was about 6 years ago, or almost 7 now, before the rise of dance music really started hitting the college market in the US, when Avicii started to get big, when Calvin Harris's first singles started to get big at radio. And being a DJ was always my dream. Now, 6 years later, of course, we've all seen how the entire scene has evolved in really different ways. And now there's this trend of EDM is not cool, it's dead, it's dying. And Diplo, Wes, a good friend of mine actually, says DJ culture is really lame, we're all lame, and in a recent Billboard article. And I recently released this video in not necessarily argument to that, but more kind of just stating the real fact that dance music is not dead at all and is not really going anywhere, because frankly, it's been around for a really long time, as has DJing, as has anything else. And the whole concept of the video is that as a genre begins to birth in a new region of the world, in this case, obviously, dance music started getting big here in the United States, everybody gets excited about it. They get hype about it. They don't understand it. They don't know what it is. And EDM was really just a very simple way of explaining a giant, complicated genre to people who just didn't understand what dance music was. And now EDM has become this buzzword for a certain style of dance music, a certain style of performance, when the reality is, as Matt previously coined perfectly, EDM is just a new way of composing music. It's not necessarily a genre in and of itself. And that's kind of what the whole basis of this video was, just kind of explaining that the fans are still dancing, the fans are still having a great time at these shows, and in my mind, dance music isn't going anywhere. It's actually just growing, and more people are becoming educated about it and understanding what it's really about.
Cool. I think one of the reasons why some people tend to, talk about an EDM bubble or talking about, is this the end for this? Is the changes and the trends and festivals? What are sort of your feelings on where dance music is heading?
Well, kind of piggybacking off of what I just said, I think the fans and the listeners are more educated now than I think they were 6 years ago, naturally. And so the quality filter is just higher. Everybody has a higher threshold for what they like, both musically or with a festival or with any kind of performance. People want to see fresh, new things. And so where I think it's going is really just the best festivals are going to continue to succeed. The poor festivals are going to fail because the fans aren't going to buy tickets to things that aren't interesting or new to them. So I think it's kind of up to us as industry members and leaders to constantly reinvent how we convey both creativity through music and through performance and through digital media, whether that's through video content or playing live instruments or artists collaborating who are friends. One of my close friends, we just finished a collaboration. I can't mention his name yet because it's not public information, but we've been friends for a really long time. And my artist friends and I were constantly trying to push boundaries together because dance music is a very collective thing. It's the only kind of music where artists are playing other artists' music, right? In hip hop, yeah, artists will do covers or remixes. In pop, a pop performance, Bieber's not gonna sing an Ariana record. But when I play and when I DJ, I'm playing all my friends' music, and that makes dance music a really unique community. It's up to us now to use that community to transform the experience for fans.
Speaking of harnessing the positive power of this community, you recently launched a record label called Bloom, which was sort of like the first not-for-profit record label. Want to explain to them where that label came from and what you're doing with it?
Definitely, yeah. So in the past 2 months, my first record on this label, Is It Love, right behind me. Is It Love was written down in Australia last February. And I've been holding on to the song for a really long time. I didn't really know what to do with it. I didn't know what label to put it out on. And it was always my dream to use music as a tool to give back. And this label was kind of the solution to that struggle that I had with my music. Instead of just, putting the song stereotypically on a record label, that record label spends a lot of money on it. Hopefully they make money back at the end of the day, because everybody needs to make money in this business at some point. My attitude was, screw it, why not do something to truly give back to the community and use music as the tool for that? So Bloom, the record label, was the first, at least to my knowledge, and I don't think anybody's found somebody else who's doing it yet, at least. Bloom is the first not-for-profit record label. Every single dollar from iTunes sales and Spotify streams is donated to charity. The first charity is Pencils of Promise, which is an organization that I've worked with for the past 3 years. We've raised over $100,000 with them before the song came out, and since the song came out, we raised an additional $60,000. So we're at $160,000 raised now, with the goal of hitting 200 total by the end of 2016. We are well on our way, and I'm very excited about that. The reason why it's cool is because it gets fans to engage with the music in a new way. When fans share something that they love, that's on my record label, whether it's my song, whether it's my friend's songs that will eventually come out on the label, anytime a fan shares it, another Spotify stream happens every, I think, and don't quote me on this exactly, I think it's about $5,000 raised per million streams of a song. So anytime you share it as a fan, you're actually directly contributing to philanthropic purposes, specifically Pencils of Promise. The cool thing is, with the label in the future, I want to get the fans involved. So the first 200 grand is for Pencils of Promise, because that was my choice of charity. I want to actually poll fans and see what charities they want to contribute to in the future. And that's something that I feel like isn't being done enough in music. We're all privileged enough. I feel super privileged to be doing what I love. I mean, this is my dream. It's been my dream ever since I was, playing piano as a 6-year-old. I've always wanted to be in music. And this is just kind of a unique opportunity to give back. It's karma to me. It's like I'm lucky enough to be doing what I'm doing. Why not use music as a tool to give back in lots of different ways? And I really, really hope that more and more people get behind the cause, and that fans keep spreading the word.
We've had some good conversations about your previous philanthropic work with Pencil of Promise, and maybe you can just fill them in on kind
Sure.
of what the backstory is there.
Yeah, so I've worked with Pencils of Promise specifically because I guess where to start here. My background in philanthropy, I started in microfinance because I studied business, and I made small loans to entrepreneurs in developing countries to help them build their businesses. This was my high school project when I was 16 to 18 years old. And then when I got to college, I got so busy with work that I couldn't do anything that was truly philanthropic. I just didn't have time. I was so busy studying for finance exams and stuff, My goal was originally to work on Wall Street. I actually had a job offer at BlackRock that I turned down to be a DJ. And so after my career started taking off, I really started thinking about, okay, what's a new way that I could give back that isn't microfinance? What could I do that I was truly passionate about? And I studied up on a lot of organizations. I found Pencils of Promise. Education to me is the best way you can give back to the community, because the imprint on, the imprint for generations to come is massive compared to any other kind of philanthropic work. And I met Adam Braun, Scooter Braun's brother. He inspired me to start working with the organization, and we actually built our first school with them down in Justo, Rufino, Guatemala in the beginning of 2013. And I went and visited the school with Sophia Bush, who I'm a big fan of, and we got to hang out in Guatemala for a week. We got to see the school, and after that, I was like, I gotta keep working with this organization, because the experience was absolutely incredible. And I really hope that in the future, when we build more schools, that I'll be able to bring some fans with me to visit so that they can see the direct impact of what they've done to help me spread the music and spread the word.
Absolutely. I think it's, it took courage to, forgo what would have been, a comfy Wall Street job for, the unknowns of trying to make it as a DJ. What sort of advice would you have, given the current climate, for, young people trying to make it as an artist in the dance space?
And I think I should do a video on this for like 10 minutes. I wish I had all the time to give all the advice that I could, but I think my situation is unique in the sense that it's really been me and my team. I've never been truly signed to a major record label. My management has always been people who are either friends of mine or close to friends of mine, and it's kind of nice working that way. And I think that everybody on my team and I would all echo the one biggest piece of advice is work really, really hard. Work harder than everybody else, because someone else is right next to you who wants exactly what you want and might be working harder than you. And I think, you can't fake creativity. You can't fake talent at the end of the day. So if you truly have what it takes, if you work really, 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 really hard, something is gonna happen. And what's really cool is now that I've been doing this for almost 6 years, I've seen that advice that I've given some friends of mine, I've seen that advice pay off. And it's incredible because it's really true with whatever you do. Someone wants what you want more than you do. So you just gotta work harder than them. Everything's, it's not really competitive. Music isn't competitive, but it is at the same time. You're constantly trying to push your music to new levels, reach new audiences, and think of creative ways to do that. And I'm proud of myself and my team for coming together and doing it all independently. And that's kind of my biggest advice I could give to someone else is basically work your ass off.
Who are some of the artists that mentored you on your way up?
That's a really good question. I think there have been so many, but to name a few, to give a couple shout outs to the big guys, Tiesto was my first mentor. Sorry, my voice is cracked. The first thing I ever released was actually a Tiesto remix. It was through an online remix competition, and it was the #1 remix. But I ended up not winning the competition because Tiesto liked the #2 people more. The #2 people are now some of my closest friends in the business, Paris and Simo, and we actually released a song together. It was actually my first original song called Escape back in 2013 on Hardwell's record label, who's another mentor of mine. So I would say Tiesto and Hardwell were my first two mentors. They constantly know how to reinvent themselves with the changing climate of dance music. And that's what makes them really, really special artists. They're also amazing people. A lot of people say a lot of bad things about some DJs out there. Tiesto and Hardwell are some of the nicest people that I've met in this business, and they just love what they do. And those are the kind of people that inspire me. Just people who are super passionate about what they do make me fired up about my own career. I think later on, so those were my two first inspirations. I think later on, I kind of realized that I've been more inspired by artists who are smaller than me than artists who are bigger than me. There are some amazingly talented people out there who may or may not blow up, but their work ethic and their patience with their music and their craft is what inspires me most. To name one, Gordon, one of the members of Botnek, is a really close friend of mine. We made a song together called Vikings. That was one of the biggest records of Ultra of 2014. Jack Hughes' first set ever. They played our record like second in the set, and everybody was talking about it. Gordon is insanely talented. Eric, his partner, is insanely talented as well. I just don't see Eric as much because he's up in Seattle. Gordon's in LA, and he just made a song with, actually, ironically enough, my girlfriend's brother is an incredible singer. I actually connected them. And he made the first metal dance song that I've ever heard. It's straight up metal, but all the drums are dance drums. So it's not like 4 on the floor. It's like you literally feel like da-da-da, da-da-da. It's like crazy, right? And I played it live for the first time at Spring Awakening Music Festival yesterday, and everybody was like, no one knew what to do in the crowd. Nobody knew what to do. But everybody asked me about it afterward, including Rory, my videographer. He's like, dude, I need that song. I don't know what that was, but I loved it. And that's where I draw inspiration from most, is like these young artists who aren't influenced by the business and the world around them. They they all have a very organic perspective towards the creative process, and I can never put myself back in their shoes, but I love seeing what they do, and that inspires me to change up what I'm doing.
Speaking of the creative process, why don't you tell them a bit about how you approach creating an original track, from scratch?
Wow, that's a tough one. So I started off in my career as a mashup artist. I didn't know how to produce music. I play piano, I play guitar, I sing, I play drums, I play lots of instruments. And I started, though, just by basically pairing up pop vocals with popular dance songs back at a time when dance music wasn't quite big here in the US. And that's kind of how everything started, just through mashups. Eventually, my creative process evolved into writing everything at the piano. So whenever every song you hear of mine, it starts at the piano. The chords of the piano are molded into the record. And I think before I came in here, I heard they were playing some acoustic versions of my tracks. The acoustic versions are actually the first versions. They're not made afterward, which is a really cool fact. I think a lot of people always think, oh, let's make a song and then let's do an acoustic version later. The acoustic version is just the raw, uncut record. And that's been my process since day one, starting at the piano. I don't write all of the lyrics to my songs, but Is It Love was partially written by me. Me and Yeah Boy teamed up together in Australia to write that record. And it starts at the piano, and then I kind of have to think. I take a couple of months to think about, okay, how can I relay this emotion through dance music, and what genre is going to do that in the most effective way? And that's a really big struggle for me as an artist. It's like I have the song, right? I have the vocal and I have the piano, or at least I have the piano. Sometimes I don't have the vocal yet. And I think to myself, okay, this is how I felt in that moment that I created those chords. What's the best electronic element that's going to convey that? It's a really difficult process for me, and it's something that over the past 6 years I think I've gotten way better at. In the beginning, it took a lot longer to finish things. So what I'll do is I'll just experiment in the studio with different sounds, pianos, guitars. I'll start with natural instruments, and then I'll try to replicate those instruments with synthesizers and then tweak them in ways that make things feel bigger from a dance music, energetic perspective. And that's a very short version of my creative process.
I think we'd be remiss not to mention the tragic events of Orlando over the past weekend. What do you believe an artist's role should be in responding to tragedies like what happened there and at the Bataclan in Paris?
It's whenever I see reactions to tragic events, especially on Twitter and on the internet, I think what's fascinating is how quickly people are mobilized to respond, especially around artists and music, not just dance music, any kind of music. And one of the coolest things I've seen, at least since the tragic events that happened in Orlando, and I have people, my girlfriend used to live in Orlando. She has a lot of friends down there. It's very scary. It was scary for her. One of my friends, Albert, who runs a lot of the digital media for Ultra Music Festival, he has a lot of friends down there, and there were so many people that were very close to me, and honestly, I was paralyzed by it. I actually didn't end up saying anything on social media, or I tried to refrain from it because I didn't even know what to say. But thanks to some other artists, namely Dash Berlin, Jeff, who's a really good friend of mine, he took a moment during his set yesterday in Chicago, and he had a graphic. He had his visual guy put a graphic up behind him on the LED wall for Orlando, and they did a moment for Orlando, and I think it's especially important because of the location of the tragedy. It was in a club. It was a very hateful crime, and we do have a responsibility to spread the message and to ensure the safety of our fans, because at the end of the day, it was in a club, and I would never want a fan of mine to feel unsafe coming to a show, right? And I think that over time, as dance music has gotten bigger in the US, I think more and more artists are getting better at relaying that message, not just in this situation, but a message of safety in general, because dance music is about fun, not about hate. It's not about the color of your skin, your sexual orientation, any of that. It's about bringing people together and forgetting all the hardships you have during the week at work and whatever else is going on in your life. It's an escape for people, and it's our responsibility as artists to encourage safety in that experience.
Absolutely. I think that just about winds up the time we had for...
Sorry I was so long-winded for some of these answers.
Well, they'll anything that we didn't get to, we'll be able to address in the audience Q&A. So, without further ado,
Hey, man.
What's up?
So I was kind of wondering, like, you were poised your entire life to, follow this background of being in the financial world. And when you made that hard right into becoming a DJ and doing what you love, whenever there was a particular, like, hard night or, like, a bad DJ set or whatnot, what were some of the things that kept you motivated to keep on going on?
That's a great question, man. Social media and digital media will always portray the artist's life as being an incredible experience. And it is. I couldn't be happier. But there are those moments, it's like that you're so much lower than you could be doing anything else because people are watching you, right? So when something goes wrong, it's not like something goes wrong just for you or just for your family. It's kind of wrong for everybody, right? Especially you said a bad set, for instance. And the level of depression that happens post bad set or post bad song, whatever it is, it's pretty heavy. It's pretty heavy because, I feel like I have a responsibility to my listeners and I always want to give them the best. And when I don't, it sucks. What keeps me motivated, I think, most, honestly, and my dad, one of my biggest inspirations, said this best to me: mistakes are your strength at the end of the day, because you will always learn from every failure that you have. And luckily for me, a lot of my failures haven't necessarily been visible to the public. They've been more personal in the creative process, or sometimes it's a performance. But the truth is, like, I'm not really scared of making mistakes anymore, because I know in my heart that I'm going to learn from them at some point. And when I say mistakes, I don't mean like moral mistakes. I mean creative mistakes more than anything else, right? I'm going to learn from those creative mistakes, and I know it's going to make me a better artist. And that, more recently in my career, has enabled me to take bigger risks. And my new music is definitely the riskiest music that I've ever thought to release. But it's kind of exciting. Like, the risks used to scare me and used to demotivate me. More recently, these big risks and these big things creatively are motivating, because I just can't wait to see what people think. So that's what keeps me motivated, I guess. To answer your question in short, it's just, what's going to happen when I take this big risk, and it's the I told you so to myself later if it works. That's what keeps me motivated.
How's it going, dude?
What's up, man?
How's it going? My name is Zebby, but I'm curious, what drives you? Like, why do you work so hard to do what you want to do?
It's changed over time. I think more recently it's pushing boundaries musically. Like, originally everybody just tries to get their foot in the door. You do whatever it takes to make it in this business because it's a tough business, right? And that's how I was 5 years ago. Over time, I've tried to adapt to the scene, to changing tastes, all these different things. More recently, my motivation is I want to make some music that's going to touch people in ways that no one's ever felt before. And you can do that uniquely with electronic music because you're designing the sound, right? In any other kind of music, yeah, there's like an engineer that's making something sound good, but it's guitars, it's pianos, it's the same sounds. With electronic music, you can do things with sound that you could never have done before. And I would describe a lot of my existing music and future music as kind of both dark yet euphoric. So like super heavy yet uplifting. It's kind of paradoxical, right? And so one of the things that motivates me right now is how I can make that kind of music that makes someone feel something they've never felt before, something that's ineffable, something that words cannot describe. And the love for doing that is what makes me sleep a few hours every night. Even last night I played a festival yesterday. 2 nights ago, I only slept 2 hours. And then I played a festival last night, and then I flew into New York from Chicago, and I couldn't go to sleep because I had this idea in my head, and I really wanted to put it down. I had no instruments, I had nothing, I just had my laptop, and I ended up I still worked on something for 2 hours last night just because I was in the mood. And I think that's something that it takes, also kind of going back to the advice point. Like, if you don't have that drive, music is not for you. Like, you have to love it, and you have to want to do it every second. And that's my motivation for doing it.
think we've got time for one more question from the
Hello.
audience.
Hello. Thanks for being here. I was wondering, what's your most memorable festival or venue ever been part of?
Perfect timing for that question. Ever since I was a kid growing up in Vegas, playing at EDC was the dream. You know, that was the end-all, be-all. And that was actually my biggest motivation until recently. Like, my biggest motivation was playing my favorite stage at EDC, and I had the privilege of doing that last year, Circuit Grounds, at 9 p.m. on Saturday, and it was my favorite set I played in my life, the best set I think I personally, giving myself, if I could give myself a rating on a set, I'd give myself a pretty high rating for that set. I normally don't. I'm normally way too self-critical, but we had custom visuals done. I played lots of new music, and I think all the fans walked away with the same feeling that I did, which was, holy, insert bad word. Yeah, no, definitely EDC last year was the best experience, and after that, after it was over, I kind of had this release almost, you know, because it was my goal ever from the beginning of my career, play this stage at EDC, play this stage at EDC, and since then, only since then have I really found myself trying to push boundaries, because before that, I was kind of only focused on that goal, and after I hit that goal, I set a new one, you know, which is to do different things musically, and that's what I've been striving for now.
All right. Thank you, guys. Give it up for Blau.
Thanks, Matt. You're the man. We actually hate each other outside of this. No, I'm just kidding.